You in English on Nia. My name is Anna Nichenko. Hello, and we broadcast from the heart of Europe. It's Ukraine. Today we'll talk about Russian invasion of Ukraine, the 27th day, and the consequences of this war in Ukraine. Which countries already feel these consequences, and about the world hunger, and also about the price of the delay with pressure on Russia.
Шановні панове спікери, шановний пане прем'єр-міністре Драгі, шановні пані та панове сенатори, депутати, дорогі італійські народи. Сьогодні вранці я говорив з його святістю Папою Франциском, і він сказав дуже важливі слова. Розумію, що ви хочете миру, розумію, що ви маєте себе захищати, і військові захищають, і цивільні люди мужньо боронять батьківщину. Кожен захищає батьківщину. І я на це відповів: наш народ став цим військом. Став цим військом, коли побачив, яку біду несе ворог, яке спустошення він залишає по собі. І скільки крові хоче пролити. Коли трохи більше тижня тому я виступив зі зверненням до мітингу у Флоренції та ще й у десятках європейських міст, я просив усіх італійців, усіх європейців запам'ятати число 79. 79 стільки дітей було вбито в Україні на той момент, а тепер це 117. Ще 38 дітей за ці дні. Така ціна зволікання із тиском на Росію, щоб вона припинила цю жорстоку війну. 117 дітей, тисячі дорослих, тисячі поранених, десятки тисяч зруйнованих родин, сотні тисяч зруйнованих доль, мільйони покинутих квартир, домівок. І все це почалося з однієї людини.
Ukraine is fighting with the Russian occupying army for 27 days now, and the enemy's forces have been noticeably exhausted during this time. According to the General Staff, the Russians are running out of ammunition and food reserves. Many Russian military personnel refuse to fulfill the orders of their commanders, and some, out of despair, continue to smash up Ukrainian peaceful cities. So the 27th day of this occupation, let's watch.
War without rules. Russian military forgot about all military standards and used prohibited weapons against Ukraine. The day before, a hypersonic missile Kinjal was used against one of the shopping malls in Kiev. Moreover, the occupants dropped phosphorus bombs on Kramatorsk. This information was released by the first deputy head of the Kyiv Patrol Police, Oleksiy Belishitsky. He reminded Russia had previously used phosphorus bombs in Popasna. Severodonetsk, Lysychansk, Rubizhne, Popasna and Kremina remain under constant shelling. The cities have been hit hard by Russian aviation, but our servicemen continue to hold the enemy back. The occupiers in Kherson threw flashbang grenades at pro-Ukrainian protesters on the Svoboda Square and fired at them. Several people were injured. Also, Russian military does not miss the opportunity to grab other people's wealth. They robbed another grocery supermarket. Occupiers also keep on attacking the city of Mykolaiv. A hotel was destroyed by a missile attack. Rescuers are currently cleaning up the debris. Military terms, we are moving. We are in the process of kitting and helping the army, the rear. We are setting up logistics for the live enterprises. We are making lists. We're setting up a pass regime. Getting ready for the planting season. We are putting guards on the enterprises. We return to peaceful life whether possible. The Rivne region was shelled again. The enemy army fired 4 missiles. Only one reached it. The enemy continues to rage. During the 7th air alert today, 4 missile strikes from the air were detected in the area. 3 of the missiles were handled by our armed forces. The 4th, possible damage and casualties are specified. Combat also continues around Borispol in the Kyiv region. The head of the city urges residents to leave the city temporarily. The fewer people in the city, the easier it will be for the Ukrainian armed forces to repel attacks from the Russian army. The less civilians remain in the city, the easier is the work of the armed forces, as the practice of those cities where battles are now underway shows. There is no critical need to stay in the city right now. The fighting is going on around the city. I appeal to the civilians, be reasonable. Contact the call center and, if possible, leave the city. Russian troops had burned down a stable in Hostomel. A few of horses that lived there may have survived by joining a neighboring herd, but most were burned alive. However, Ukrainian servicemen drew the Russians out of the village of Moshun in the Kyiv region. Kadyrov and Russian paratroopers had previously been there.
Alexander Sashko, Executive Director, International Renaissance Foundation, joins our program. Hello, Alexander.
Hello.
Thank you that you joined today our program. You know that official information is 117 children were dead during this Russian invasion of Ukraine. How do you think, what kind of price must be paid to stop this war?
We don't know at this moment. Nobody knows how costly this war will be in the end. We just have no illusions that lives of people, lives of children don't matter for Putin. He just doesn't care. Whoever killed, whoever lost his or her relatives. So really he don't care. And that is why nobody can say now either the worst case losses are ahead of us or behind of us. So unfortunately at this moment there is no sign on the side of Putin that he is ready to for peace.
He doesn't care about Ukrainian children, he doesn't care even about his Russian people, his Russian nation, because now he makes, Russia makes their men to go to army, and even we have information that people who have some debts, loan problems with loans, they are made to go to military now. We know lots of facts when, I think yesterday or today in Sumy, 300 military Russians refused to go, they just left their tanks and refused to go to this war. How he makes his own nation, what will be with Russians after this war?
I think that, again, he doesn't care, and the most of Russians also don't care. Because for them, it is not so dramatic as for us, as for those who think about us, as for those who have an access to the real information. For the most of Russians, this is just an attempt to defeat some Nazis. So there is a whole mythology around this war, and the most of Russians support it because this war is very comfortable for them. They just find another external enemy, and this is very comfortable also for the government, for President Putin, who this way may justify whatever he wants, and then that would be a guarantee that the society will not care about their living standards. They will not care about the national currency, about the devaluation, about the future collapse of Russian economy. Everything will be accepted by that society because this is a tragedy and this is a tradition of Russia, that there is no, this is very specific perception of so-called Russian greatness. And this kind of Russian greatness is the biggest value, and there is no other value which may compete with this value. So if on one hand you have the Russian greatness, and on the other hand you have the human lives, so the choice will be for Russian greatness, the majority of Russian people.
What about European values? Now we always say that now Ukrainians, they are on this, I don't know, they just fight not only for our country, not only for our values. We fight also for European values and world values. Now we know the head of European diplomacy accused Russia of war crimes in Mariupol, and the foreign minister of the 27 foreign ministers of the 27 European Union countries will discuss new sanctions against Moscow, financial assistance to Ukraine, as well as their own defense concept, strategic compass. Again and again, what kind of sanctions Russia must fail to be stopped?
It's just a long story. All the sanctions is a good choice by the European and international community. But we have no illusions that these sanctions immediately will prevent Russia from further steps in their war against Ukraine. What can sanctions do is to undermine the stability of Russian economy, and in the end will bring Russian economy to collapse. But it will not happen immediately. That is why even welcoming sanctions which have already been introduced. At the same time, we also arguing for the next phases of these sanctions, because we would like to have even stronger sanctions to have the collapse of Russian economy more visible, more possible in not so distant perspective. Because if the overall distance from today to the collapse of Russia take years, it means that the war take years. And every day of this war will cost thousands of lives of Ukrainian citizens.
We know that Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett is preparing to visit Kiev, and some newspapers wrote that leader of Great Britain is also going to visit our country. Who you think now is the best friend, Ukrainian friend now to protest our country, to protest Europe now?
I think that we have a lot of friends, especially those who understand that this is not just Ukrainian interest to fight against Russia, but to some extent this is an existential threat to entire free world, democratic world. And if Russia succeeds now with Ukraine, there is no other way that the next will be Europe. And that is why many people in the Western countries understand that they need to support Ukraine even stronger. Yes, there are some differences among European leaders. Some of them are more ready to help Ukraine. Some others try to abstain. But certainly you named the correct countries who are the most active. And I think that United Kingdom and Poland and the United States and also Baltic states, Czech Republic, are among those who have the most convenient policy vis-a-vis this war, and who provide the most significant assistance to Ukraine, both in terms of military equipment but also diplomatic.
In context of sanctions, political wrote that the issue of the European Union dependence on Russia, oil and gas, will be the central topic of United States President Joe Biden visit to Europe on March 24th and 25. What do you think this embargo on oil and gas can help?
I think, first of all, we do not expect the entire Europe may introduce embargo on Russian gas, because their dependence is very heavy. We know that current share of Russia on the European gas market is approximately 40% of entire gas supplies. So this amount of gas cannot be removed just within 1 month. So it takes long. It takes probably a few years for for the most of European consumers to get rid of dependence on Russian gas. However, some of the countries who have more diversified delivery of natural gas may do it even now. The way how United Kingdom did it already, deciding to cancel their imports of Russian gas up to the end of the year. We also know that the United States made this decision, but again, it's easier for them because the share of Russian gas on their market is not critical. While it will take longer for Central and Western European countries, for example, for Germany, where the share of the Russian gas is approximately 50% of the entire gas consumption. So now they need to decide on the direction and on the time frame. So they need to decide that in principle, they will no longer buy Russian gas as soon as they will be able, and then provide a time frame. For example, 5 years to solve this problem.
And what about summits, NATO, G7, European Union summit, and about the will of Joe Biden? Will it help some kind or not?
Everything matters. I mean, every summit. So we do not expect that any summit will solve all our problems, but we understand that it is very important that world and European leaders work together in order to elaborate more significant and stronger measures against Russia, and stronger measures also to support Ukraine, which means military delivery, financial support, but also the support of Ukrainian application to join the European Union.
Thank you, Alexander. Alexander Sashko, Executive Director, International Renaissance Foundation, was online in our program. Talking about Russia and talking about women living in the temporary uncontrolled territories of Donetsk and Luhansk region, whose husbands were forcibly mobilized for war by the self-proclaimed leadership of these territories. They recorded video and they asked this temporary leadership to give their men back. Let's watch this video.
Hello, Denis Vladimirovich. I am a wife of one of the reservists who was called up and mobilized to defend our homeland. I have a question for you. Why were our guys who never saw, never fought, never held a gun in their hands sent to an unknown place? It is not clear to what territories. There is no contact with them at all. They were not clothed, not trained. No water, no food. They have nothing. They had no warm clothes. It was freezing outdoors. We can't contact them at all. They were just sent to the front line as cannon fodder to be shot. Why did you allow such an attitude towards our own citizens and call them to defend our homeland if they have never been trained in war and warfare? You just left them behind, left them to die. Our boys are being killed. Please explain why you did this, why we haven't been able to contact our husbands for some time now, and why no one knows where they are or what happened to them. Dear Denis Vladimirovich, the wife of a reservist who used to work in the heating system is here to talk to you. On February 23rd, he and his colleagues went to defend our homeland. He showed up at a mobilization point. There are people who have worked all their lives for our republic. Now they are on the front line. They didn't become cowards. They are ready to defend their homeland. But they are in such conditions that it's a nightmare. I'm not even talking about the cold. I understand it's war out there. They have no food. They have no water. They have no communication. We didn't know anything about them for a few days. Now they are under Mariupol, 8 kilometers away on the front line. They are being taken away in groups and not all of them are coming back. They have people killed and wounded. The whole issue is that these are people who have never been in combat, never held a gun in their hands. Now they are completely untrained, forced to go into combat. Dear Denis Vladimirovich, I am addressing you as the wife of a mobilized man and also on behalf of all mothers and wives. Our husbands and sons have never held weapons in their hands and were sent to the cruelest environment, terrible frost, lack of food, with no training of any kind. There is no communication with many. Many are on the first line. They are not military, they are ordinary people, they are utility workers, lawyers, economists, employees of ministries. We are asking for your help. Get them off the front lines, from the hot spots where fighting is taking place, because there are specially trained units for that. Many of them are located in Donetsk, simply on a barracks position.
So mobilization on temporary occupied territories of Ukraine is failed, and lots of Russian military are afraid to go to one small village in Kherson region. It's called Chernobyevka. So Chernobyevka, things to know about Ukraine if you're Russian.
Putin said that Lenin invented Ukraine. Kadyrov gave time to surrender until 31st of February. Their army doesn't have enough IQ to understand why it's a deadly mistake to come to Chernobyevka. The small village in the south of Ukraine, not far from Kherson, wasn't popular even among Ukrainians, but it has already become a legendary for war tutorials. First time Russian occupiers came to Chernobyevka on the 27th of February. Helicopters, troops, vehicles, everything was burned down after Ukrainian army attack. Second time on the 7th of March, with the new commander, optimistic but still poorly educated Russians sent more troops and helicopters there. Same result, more garbage. The villagers themselves started to express frustration because the zone is about to start and pieces of Russian wreckage fall on the fields. Couple more attempts and Chernobyevka receives official status of the cursed place. Ukrainians create memes and collages devoted to the village. 15th of March. New Russians, obviously without the internet, come to Chernobyevka on 7 helicopters. Next day, the villagers are really angry with the amount of metal all around. 18th of March. Russian general comes to see Chernobyevka firsthand. The next moment, he's blown away with the beauty of southern Ukraine. Today, Ukraine authorities directly appealed to the Chernobyevka villagers. Take courage. Chernobyevka. 7th time.
And now our next guest is going to be online in our program. It's Peter Dickinson, the publisher of Business Ukraine magazine and Lviv Today. He'll be just in some seconds online with us. We will also discuss the situation with European Union summit, with NATO, with the visit of Joe Biden to Europe. First, let's watch next video. It's The Way of Terror. Russian army cowardly kill women and children using the undefended sky in Ukraine. Let's watch.
They can't stand against the Ukrainian army, but they kill civilians every day. The Russian army attacked a shopping mall in Kyiv with a rocket. 8 people died. A whole district left without windows and doors. Overall, more than 70 residential buildings in Kyiv are destroyed as the result of Russian attacks. Almost 1,000 in Kharkiv. In Mariupol, the shelling and bombings happen every 10 minutes. 115 children are killed by Russian bombs and the bullets since the beginning of war. And one step closer to the ecological catastrophe. In Sumy, leakage of ammonia began after the Russian attack. The 5 kilometers area is in danger. The invaders continue to bomb the city and villages around. Dozens of killed civilians. In Chernihiv, also in the north of Ukraine, the occupiers shoot at the water delivery truck. 2 civilians died. In Kharkiv, 96-year-old Boris Romachenko, former Buchenwald prisoner, died in his apartment after Russian missile strike. Killing and looting. In the captured Berdyansk port, Russians stole 5 ships with the grain. This is a new level for this marauder country. Meanwhile, the EU discusses the Russian oil ban. Among the ideas, such a step would be approvable in case of massive shelling of Kyiv or usage of chemical weapons. The number of innocent people killed in Ukraine is not at the top of the list. Germany suggests not to hurry.
During martial law, people with disability, regardless of age, were made easier to travel abroad. My colleagues found out how difficult it is to get to the borders inside Ukraine during the ongoing hostilities in the country. We will watch this material right now. We will watch it a little bit later, I think, because our guest is already online. We will communicate with him. So, Peter Dickinson, the publisher of Business Ukraine magazine and Lviv Today. Hello, Peter.
Hi.
Thank you that you join our program, and thank you that you explain from your position all the situation that is going on here now in Ukraine. It's really important to give the real picture, real facts, because lots of information from Russia, parallel bubble, I don't know, informational bubble, their own bubble that is created in the whole world. So it's really important. Now I'd like to ask you about the summits. Which summit, I don't know, European Union, NATO, G7, which kind of summit can help us now and give some results, this visit of Joe Biden, President of the USA, to Europe, and maybe, I don't know, communication with Poland President, I think it's on 25th of March is planned. Can it help to stop the war in Ukraine?
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me on the show. I don't think we should expect any major breakthroughs immediately. I don't think we should expect there to be any dramatic changes in overnight. But I think the fact that Joe Biden is coming to Europe is very symbolic. It's very important. He will clearly not be coming empty-handed. He needs to get results, and he needs to show leadership. Whether that will come at the NATO summit or in perhaps private talks with individual European partners is not clear, but I think certainly he'll be looking to significantly increase the support for Ukraine, the military support for Ukraine. He'll be looking to significantly increase the sanctions against Russia, which are the two key areas of the conflict from an international point of view at the moment. So I think we can expect to see both those sectors strengthening over the coming week. We can expect to see further toughening of the sanctions against Russia, tightening of the screws on the Russian economy, as it were, and increased weapons to Ukraine. Hopefully, specifically, we're looking for more anti-aircraft weapons. I think that's quite likely. I think we will see that. We're looking specifically to Slovakia to hope they will pass on their Soviet-era air defense systems. Other countries also have similar systems. Certainly, the Bulgarians and other East European former Warsaw Pact countries. So, I think these are the key areas to look for. I don't think we should expect again any dramatic policy breakthroughs, but we will see a push for more support for Ukraine, more solidarity, and much tougher measures against Russia.
What about this denazification, like Putin called this war, and looking for Nazi? Let's watch one video, one speech of our president, and then discuss it.
Це подвиг. Це подвиг те, що ви протестуєте. Це щастя, що такі люди у нас є, що ми всі Україна. За час цього вторгнення серед мільйонів наших людей постійно заявляють про себе герої. Колись звичайні українці, а зараз борці, чоловіки і жінки, які піднімаються за нашу державу повсюди. На півдні, на сході, на півночі, у центрі, на заході і за кордоном. Піднімаються так, що ворог не вірить, що це дійсно реальність. Але ми змусимо їх повірити. Змусимо запам'ятати, що до нас їм дороги немає. І ніколи не буде. У Київ, який мужньо і велично стоїть над Дніпром. У Харків, гордий, охайний, освічений Харків, який вони б'ють. А він ніяк не підкорюється. Чернігів, древній Чернігів, який з часів Орди не знав такого звірства, яке переживає тепер від російських військових. Суми, Охтирка, Лебедин, Ізюм, Дергачі, Волноваха, Попасна, Бородянка, Гостомель, Макарів, Миколаїв, Маріуполь. Працьовите, чесне місто. Маріуполь, яке окупанти просто знищують, руйнують у попіл, але яке переживе їх усіх. Нікчемних рабів, які не вміють піклуватись про власну країну, про власних людей, а ще йдуть у чужу.
So while the Kremlin says to the whole world that it is a denazification in Ukraine, His army does a real genocide, I don't know, like Nazis, they do things here in our country. How can we explain to the whole world, how can we explain to Russian people what is really going on? Because lots of people really believe these Russian fakes about denazification.
Well, to be honest, I'm not convinced that many people outside Russia do believe these stories of so-called denazification. I think that these seem to be nonsense by most people internationally, and specifically, I think a lot of people now are coming round to the point of view that the country that needs to be denazified is actually Russia. I think a lot of people were watching Putin's rally the other day in Moscow and saw it and said, well, this is basically a Nuremberg Nazi-style rally. It had all of the characteristics of a Nuremberg-style rally. Putin's speech also, I think, 3 or 4 days ago, in which he spoke about traitors and vermin and fifth columnists and crushing people, crushing opponents, was pure fascism. And I think these are resonating with the outside world. Now, you talk about how to influence Russians. I think that's a much more difficult challenge, because I think they are living in an alternative reality, which is very difficult to influence at this stage. I think, unfortunately, it will take defeat and crushing defeat, and perhaps even many years of suffering before Russians begin to wake up to the reality of what their country has done and what their country has become. But frankly speaking, that is not the priority for Ukraine today. The priority for Ukraine is to win. The international community overwhelmingly supports Ukraine and overwhelmingly recognizes the absurdity of Russian claims to be engaged in some sort of a denazification. So I don't think that Ukraine needs to spend too much time trying to debunk these myths, these fakes. Frankly speaking, often when you engage in that sort of debunking operation, you can actually lend credibility to the lie itself. I think it might be more wise, more astute for Ukraine simply to move on with what it's doing and its messaging, which is very, very strong. President Zelensky's messaging has been world class over the last 4 weeks of war. He has emerged as a genuine world leader. He has won the respect of people around the world, both politicians and general public. I've received many, many messages from friends around the world to say, wow, the leader of Ukraine, the president, he is a really impressive figure. This is a victory in itself. And I think Ukraine's resistance in general, the resilience of Ukrainians, the strength of Ukrainians, the courage of Ukrainians has made a huge impact on the world. So I don't think that Ukrainians need to be too concerned about these false narratives spread by Russia, because they've fallen flat largely. People do not buy into them. They do not believe them. There are certain people who will always believe anti-Western, as they see it, narratives, who will always seek to support countries like Russia. And again, there's not a lot you can do about that. But they are in a very small minority. Public opinion is clear, and public opinion is resoundingly behind Ukraine.
And talking about help of the world, the parliamentarian of 12 European countries as well, the United States signed a statement on the urgent need to modernize Ukraine's air defense. How do you think, what kind of help now Ukraine needs? Close the sky or something else?
Well, the debate over the closed sky is been going on for some time now, but in fact it's something that really is perhaps not the best use of Ukraine's resources in terms of the credit Ukraine has internationally. NATO has been very clear that they will not enter into anything that could create a direct conflict with Russia, a direct point of conflict where the Russian and NATO troops will physically come into contact with each other. That's what an open sky policy would entail. NATO would have to police the skies above Ukraine, and they've been very clear that they will not do that. So I think we need to look beyond that at how we can secure Ukraine's skies in other ways. There's no magic solution here. There's no magic bullet, as it were. Ukraine needs to have far better anti-aircraft technologies, which it's getting now and which it needs to get much more of. We have the Starstreak system from the UK now, which is being, as I understand, implemented. Ukrainian troops are undergoing training of how to use this system. That is one of the top one of the top handheld anti-aircraft systems available, and Ukraine will have that now. They will have a more enhanced security, anti-aircraft security, if they receive the extra systems from Slovakia and other countries that I mentioned earlier. They're all good steps towards making the skies safer. Ukraine also will hopefully receive jets from Poland at some point. The MiG transfer has been a fiasco, frankly. It's been quite embarrassing for America and Poland and NATO in general. Hopefully they'll be able to sort that out and get those planes to Ukraine. Slovakia, again, Bulgaria also have planes they can provide Ukraine potentially. So all these factors will help to create a much more secure shield over Ukraine, and also intelligence is crucially important. The West was always traditionally very, very hesitant to share its intelligence with Ukraine. They were very reluctant to do so. Recently, in the last 4 weeks of war, they've begun to do it more and more regularly. They've become much more open about sharing their intel with Ukraine, and that can also play a huge role. Ukraine has limited resources, but if it knows well in advance where the planes are coming from, where the rockets are coming from, they have a much better chance of defending the country.
And now it's really important to do some actions and to do some certain steps, because aggression not only Ukraine but also against Europe and the whole world. Thank you, Peter, for your answers and that you joined our program. I remind Peter Dickinson, the publisher of Business Ukraine magazine and Lviv Today, was online today in our program. And also I'd like to show you a video from Russian military who gave up, what they say about the reasons why they came to our country, what they did in our country. Let's watch.
Старший лейтенант Раскочко Дмитрий Русланович.
Senior Lieutenant Dmitry Ruslanovich Raskochko, Khabarovsk Krai, Khabarovsk City. I want to tell you that I joined the army to defend my state, to defend its interests, in case of an attack on our territory. Of course I was ready, but life, unfortunately, has treated me like this. Fate, rather, that I am on the territory of a foreign country. Never in my life have I imagined that I would be fighting in another country. I am a servile man, following orders.
And if you were told to kill?
It depends on whom. The guilty one is not the executor, but the one who gives those orders. Do you understand? That's how it is in Russia.
Who is a servile man ready to kill?
I am an educated person. I am an understanding person. Even by the Geneva Convention, it's forbidden to kill someone unarmed. It is forbidden. I know this very well.
And if a person with a gun defends his home, his family, his children?
But
So you see what say Russian military when they give up and when they realize the real things that they do here in our country. Also want to show you video how different countries support us and how Bundesliga players recorded an emotional video message in support of Ukraine. Let's watch it.
Der Krieg und das Leid in der Ukraine berührt uns alle sehr.
When I see the scenes in Ukraine, I'm still shocked.
Die Menschen in der Ukraine gehen uns alle an.
That is why I have donated.
In Gedanken sind wir in diesen Tagen bei den unschuldigen Menschen.
Deshalb habe ich gespendet.
The situation in Ukraine is a human catastrophe.
Genau deshalb hat die DFL eine Spendenaktion ins Leben gerufen.
Ich habe gespendet.
Der Krieg in der Ukraine betrifft uns alle.
Deswegen habe ich gespendet.
Helft, wo ihr nur helfen könnt.
Jeder kann helfen in dieser Situation, jeder auf seine Art und Weise.
Ich habe deshalb gespendet.
Lasst uns gemeinsam helfen.
Hass und Krieg sind keine Lösung.
Der Fußball steht für Frieden und Gemeinschaft.
Die Menschen dort brauchen jetzt unsere Unterstützung.
Ukraine, we have you in our heart and we have us in our thought.
Die Menschen in der Ukraine gehen uns alle an.
Und brauchen unsere Hilfe. Deshalb habe ich gespendet. Bitte hilf auch du.
Gemeinsam für die Ukraine.
Helfen wir den Menschen in ihrer Not. Vielen Dank.
And during the martial law, people with disabilities, regardless of age, were made easier to travel abroad. So my colleagues found out how difficult it is to get in the borders inside Ukraine during the ongoing hostilities in the country.
More than 2,700,000 people with disabilities have become hostages of war in Ukraine. It is almost impossible for such Ukrainians to evacuate, get down to shelter and survive in the conditions of active warfare.
When the time came to use shelters to get down to them, of course, I realized that it would be difficult because there are a lot of people there. The space is small and, in addition, generally, there are stairs. So shelters are not adapted for people with limited mobility, especially for people with severe disabilities. A person who can't hear can still walk, but a person in a wheelchair, a person with severe disability, such a person is simply deprived of everything.
During the first 3 weeks of active fighting, only about 700 people with disabilities were evacuated from Kyiv to the western borders of Ukraine. Among them is Natalia, a lawyer and social activist who has been fighting for the rights of these people for years.
I definitely remember that I forbade myself to be desperate or to give up. That is, it was important for me to remain conscious, to stay focused.
Natalia applied to a special fund for help in organizing her departure abroad. Since the woman's son also has a disability, the family was helped to travel to Poland. Germany was next on the road. Now Natalia with her husband and son live in the Netherlands.
Of course, for people with severe disabilities, it's quite an adventure. I'll tell you honestly, in the Netherlands, there are sites to search for homes for refugees from Ukraine. The homeowners literally write, "Come, we will help you survive these horrors. We will help you forget your pain."
Despite all the trouble she has undergone, the woman does not lose heart, continues to fight for inclusivity and support Ukraine at rallies abroad.
I'm going to continue to draw attention to the problems of inclusivity in society, to draw attention to the fact that even with a severe disability, we can live a full life.
Uliana Pcholkina did not lose her heart either. Although it was hard for her to get out of Bucha, Kyiv region, she managed to get others out as well.
On March 9th, when we were evacuating, we grabbed the first thing at hand, a cat, the most important thing, and I got behind the wheel of my car. My husband got behind the wheel of the van, which belongs to our NGO, and we packed as many people as possible into our cars. I was very scared to get behind the wheel, but I realized that I could take more people out and not deprive them of this opportunity.
The woman was driving literally across the minefield.
I had to drive a car through a minefield. It was an unforgettable experience. It was horrible, and seeing cars being shot up. I had to drive a car through a minefield. It was an unforgettable experience. It was horrible, and seeing cars being shot up on the road, where civilians were killed, where children's belongings were scattered, where ambulances were fired upon. I realized that we apparently did the right thing. In not living on our own and taking risks.
Today, people with disabilities are escaping from under enemy's fire thanks to the active work of volunteer centers. However, most remain helpless in the face of the war challenges, and this despite the fact that last week Ukraine made it easier for such citizens to cross the border. Now it is enough to have only one document, the one confirming the status of a person with disabilities, a certificate of getting benefits, or a medical examination certificate. Reported by Olena Shustova, Yulia Granovska, Larisa Zubenko, UATV News.
Alina Frolova, Deputy Minister of Defense of Ukraine 2019-20 joins our program. Hello, Alina, can you hear me?
Yes, I do.
Thank you that you joined our program today, and let's talk about the situation and the facts of that. The White House said that according to U.S. intelligence, Russia is preparing a cyber attack on the United States. According to the Biden administration release, this is a response to economic sanctions against Russia. Meanwhile, we know that almost 7,000 IT specialists, they just left Russia. Can we now prognose what actions will be from Russia? Because we see that they didn't have such a short war as they prognosed.
You mean in cyberspace or overall? In cyber? Well, actually, the cyber, as soon as this is hybrid war, the cyber scenarios are one of the basics for Russians, and they use it quite intensively. So they can use it to demonstrate the capability to access and to If they want just the demonstration, they usually use some kind of public resources, can be the resources of the governmental bodies or something like this. They also can target their cyber activity at the critical infrastructure because to demonstrate that they can switch off or destabilize the work of some critical infrastructure objects. But frankly saying, United States is quite developed also in the cyber defense. So, and I'm absolutely sure that their intelligence also working over the identifying the possible targets. So I don't think that, yes, they were quite severe suffering like 1 year ago and a little bit more from some cyber attacks. But in this situation, I still consider that the defense will work quite good. So, but anyway, it means that Russia will continue to work in cyber against Ukraine, against our partners, and including United States.
We know that losses of Russian armed forces in Ukraine since March 24, since February 24, is more than 15,000 personnel killed. What do you think? How do you think? What kind of price will Russia pay for this war?
Actually, Russia chose the scenario which is the less like a favorable for them, because I definitely can say you that whatever happens and how long this war it will be, it's just the beginning of the collapse of Russia as we know it. So it doesn't exist already because the economical and political crisis in Russia is of so high level now that it obviously will change completely the country. So one way is like that they will become a North Korea number two, with total isolation and debilization of population, let's say. So the another issue is that can be rise up of some kind of in long-term period, well, not like a few months, but maybe a year, maybe something like this. So it can be destabilization of political power and subordination, and it can build some separatist movements. So anyway, this is the end of the Putin regime in some period, and this is the end of the Russia we knew. And I think that in few years we will see completely different country at this place on the earth.
How do you think, what kind of results we should wait from summits, from visit of Joe Biden to Europe?
NATO is facing one of the biggest challenges. Actually, NATO was created after the Second World War for deterrence and protection of Europe from war. And now we have this war in Europe. And you know that now, in accordance with the latest polls, more than 87% of Russian population supports the attack also against Europe itself, not only, the European Union and NATO countries, not only Ukraine. So actually NATO doesn't have strategy for this for such kind of situation, and they need to develop it quite urgently. They need to develop and understand how to deal with the deterrence on the European Union and NATO borders, and how to respond on the war on Ukrainian territory, and how to adopt more fast and fluent political decision, and whether to move from deterrence actions to some kind of other active action. So this is quite difficult questions. What to do with the Black Sea, taking into consideration that there are NATO countries there, and the Black Sea is now like almost completely controlled by Russians and occupied partially by Russians. So there are many questions NATO need to discuss among them. We also know that there is like a rising voices about Ukraine and Ukrainian position and relations between the Ukraine and NATO, and some countries are quite pressing on Ukraine has a clear perspective of joining NATO and clear understanding of what NATO position is in this war as the alliance. However, the separate countries, members of NATO, are helping us a lot and supporting us a lot. But the alliance as an alliance didn't make any a strong political decision for this period, and I think that this is the quite big threat for their reputation and trust among the European countries, and they need to respond to it as fast as possible.
Thank you for your explanations. I'll remind our viewers it was Alina Frolova, Deputy Chairman, Deputy Minister of Defense of Ukraine 2019-2020. Thank you again. Speaking about the cost of and the price of this war, of this armed invasion of Ukraine, according to the Center for Economic Development, the war with Ukraine is costing Russia more than $20 billion a day. How does it affect the lives of ordinary citizens of the Russian Federation, and what could this money be used for instead of sponsoring the military campaign? Our correspondent Danila Kobza will tell more.
Il-76, a heavy military transport aircraft, is the pride of Russian aviation and the most expensive occupies equipment destroyed by the armed forces of Ukraine. One such plane costs $86 million, and Ukraine shut down 2 of them. And there are Russian pensioners, 42 million people. If they were handed money spent only on these 2 aircrafts, each would have had about 500 rubles. And if the war brought at least some benefit to the pensioner, the contribution to aviation could be understood. But experts say that this war is economically meaningless.
Я не можу сьогодні назвати жодного прикладу.
Today I can't say about a single example, neither from 20th nor from 21st century, when any war gave rapid economic growth.
Давала стрімкий ріст економіки.
I wouldn't even give economic assessment of expediency of war, because any humanitarian society,
гуманітарне суспільство, будь-яке суспільство, яке має на меті
any society that aims at the development and well-being of its own population cannot put on the scales the lives of people for whose sake it is done.
There is another example. A Russian tank costs an average of $4 million, and the most expensive drug in the world, Zolgensma, is $2 million. One dose and a child with spinal atrophy will be able to walk. One tank is 2 children's lives, or about 350 cases of cancer treatment, or 155,000 packs of insulin, 840 tons of beef, more than 9 million tons of sugar, almost 7.5 million loaves of bread. But this is a pre-war price. Since then, due to sanctions, they have grown, and in the near future, the rise in prices for almost all food products will increase significantly.
Це всі групи товарів, які зав'язані на імпорт. Це товари довгострокового використання.
These are almost all groups of goods associated with imports. These are consumer electronics, 75% of which are imported. These are cosmetics, these are perfumes. This is what is related to the ingredients and components that are imported. And this is a group of medicines.
The accelerated decline in living standards, according to the experts, will soon lead to decrease in confidence in the authorities in the Russian Federation.
Ситуація у них всередині наближається до воєнного стану.
Their situation is close to a military situation similar to ours, but without war. And this will undermine the legitimacy of Russian authorities. First of all, because people will see a huge gap between what they are told on the TV and what they see in real life.
It is not known how much all the losses in military equipment from the Russian Federation cost, but based on the Forbes statistics from March 12th, we can say that this is about $8 billion, without taking into account the cost of all missiles fired in Ukraine. Reported by Pavlo Shtelmach, Danilo Kobza, UATV News.
It was a day of difficult events and difficult conclusions. That's how our President Volodymyr Zelensky said about the previous day. And I can add that the same we can say about every day of this war is the 27th day of war. And he added it was another day that brought us closer to our victory.
Ворог потроху намагається ворушитися, десь прийти у наступ, десь захопити нашу дорогу, десь переправитись через річку. Українська армія молодці, відбиває ці намагання, ну і стримує окупантів. Цієї доби російські війська завдали удару градами по Житомирській області. Вони отримали гідну відповідь. На Харківщині під Чугуєвом збито черговий ворожий літак. Наші військові вже назбивали стільки російських літаків і гвинтокрилів, що залишається тільки дивуватися, що у їхніх пілотів замість розуму. Невже також пустота? Я сказав також не випадково, тому що пустота у них точно замість серця і замість душі, замість всього, що робить людей людьми. У Харкові був убитий Борис Романченко, колишній в'язень нацистських концтаборів. Йому було 96 років. Вдумайтесь, будь ласка, скільки усього він пройшов. Він вижив у Бухенвальді, Дора Міттельбаум, Пенемюнде і Берген-Бельзені, у конвеєрах смерті, створених гітлерівцями. А був убитий російським снарядом, який вдарив по звичайній харківській багатоповерхівці. З кожним днем цієї війни все очевидніше, що це у них таке денацифікація. Ось так.
And I also want you to show video from Kramatorsk, it's Donetsk region. Our Alena Gramova was there and will show you the real picture of this Russian armed invasion of Ukraine.
Прямо сейчас за моей спиной вы видите результаты от прямого попадания ракеты.
Right now, behind me, you can see the result of a direct missile hit. This building was not a military facility. In this small two-story building, there were private classrooms, physics, mathematics, and English were taught here. And in the next wing, there was a private kindergarten. Irina is one of a dozen entrepreneurs who rented space in this business center. She has been teaching English and Chinese for 5 years. Beneath these ruins was her study room.
Everything is under the ruins. It is impossible to go there because we were warned that there may be a collapse of the remaining structure and it is simply not possible to get there. We had a very extensive library with rather rare editions in the Chinese language.
In this space, children were taught physics and mathematics, a gym worked, and yoga classes were held. The archive of documents of one of the higher educational institutions of the city was stored in the building. At the time of the missile hit, there was an employee of the office premises. The woman died on the spot.
Я подошла, здесь была группа людей из
As I approached, here was a group from the executive committee. I said that I was worried that there was a person in the building.
Находится человек,
described, they said that we should go for identification.
According to preliminary estimates, the building is not subject to restoration. So is another residential high-rise building that burned down that day.
According to
the Donetsk Regional State Administration, there are numbers of the destroyed regional infrastructure. 10 medical institutions, including outpatient clinics, which in recent years have been actively built in the settlements near the contact line. More than 300 educational institutions. These are schools and kindergartens. 1,100 residential buildings are both high-rise buildings and private sectors. It is currently impossible to assess the full extent of the destruction in Mariupol. According to officials, more than 90% of the entire infrastructure of Mariupol has been destroyed by militias. Reported by Marina Stepanenko, Alena Gramova, UATV News.
And I also want you to show one girl. She was singing in Poland, in Polish city Lodz, and New York Post, CNN wrote about her. And even Amelia performance touched the American actress and singer that voiced by the main character of the cartoon called Hot Elsa. Let's watch.
Ні слава, ні воля, ще нам, браття українці, усміхнеться доля, згинуть наші вороженьки, як роса на сонці запанує, і ми, браття, у своїй сторонці. Душу, тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми, браття, козацького
It was the Ukrainian anthem about peaceful people, about fight against enemies. Believe in peace. It was UN English, Anna Nichenko. See you tomorrow.